brothers and sisters, inshallah, gather your attention. We're going to start, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, and may Allah's peace and blessings be upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, and upon his family, and upon the companions, and upon all the followers, inshallah. May Allah always guide us and keep us among these followers. Being with our community, and especially a community like Hartford, mashallah, an active community, an old-time community, a very dear community, and I always say our very first official CAIR meeting that happened about 29 years ago happened in the masjid here. So it always brings me special pleasure and honor, because truly the first official CAIR board meeting with Brother Aqla al-Hayek and Brother Fuad Alloush and so on happened in the little, what used to be the library. Only old people like Brother Mahmoud would remember. All the young people like Dr. Muhammad wouldn't know what I'm talking about. You owe me something after that, inshallah. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here. I know times are difficult, hard times. We're dealing with very difficult time as an ummah. And there's really little for us to be happy about, but subhanAllah, as an ummah of optimism, of hope, we always have a smile, because alhamdulillah, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised victory and has promised change for those who persevere. And may Allah make us among those who persevere for that change, inshallah. So my name is Hussam Ayloush, and I'm the Executive Director of CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations in Southern California. And with me is also a dear sister, somebody who's been very active with the community in Southern California and recently joined our team as the Senior Manager for Policy and Advocacy, and that is Sister Monica Rahim. And between both of us, inshallah, we hope to talk about building Muslim power. I'm going to let her do the technical part, because that's what she's overseeing, and she's overseeing one of our most important advocacy program, building Muslim power. Because, and I will talk a little bit generally, maybe for a couple of minutes, inshallah now. The reality is, Muslims in general associate power with something negative. We think power is abuse of power. That's not the same. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so many places in the Holy Quran tells us, right? خُذُ الْكِتَابَ بِقُوَّةٍ. Ya Yahya, right? Oh Yahya, Allah spoke to Yahya. John, the Prophet, alayhi salam, also he told him, take the book, take the Torah in with strength. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders the Muslims that وَأَعِدُّ لَهُمْ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُم مِّن قُوَّةٍ, and prepare for your adversaries all the power that you can have available. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually did not make it optional. He didn't even say, if you get a chance when you have free time, get power. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us to seek power. But we don't seek power for the sake of power. That is the difference between us and others. We seek power to protect justice, to advance justice, to protect the weak, protect the oppressed. That is why, as an ummah that fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have to seek it, and we'll learn the technicalities of it. And it's important to know that power comes in different ways. Economic power, there's moral power, social power. But here we're talking about specifically about political power. And that power that we're talking about is the power to make change. Power to have, very few politicians, let's put it this way, very few politicians make decisions on policies based on a good heart. They don't look at you and say, you know what, you have a good convincing case, I'm going to challenge abuse, I'm going to stand against occupation. I haven't met that person, very few. I can say I met a few out of hundreds. Most politicians, including good ones, make political decisions based on the balance of power. Who has that power? If the voice of the occupation and abuse and racism has the power, unfortunately you hear politicians justifying it under a million ways. Why are they going to not speak up against wrong? If the voice, the political power of those who stand against occupation, racism, injustice is stronger, then you see politicians following that path. Politicians follow the path of least resistance. And it works all the way. I know Muslims say sometimes, Ya akhi, everything is already decided. You know, this is all a scam, a sham, fake things, a facade. Nobody is, you know, everybody has decided who's gonna be elected, and they decided which policy they're gonna make. It is not true. If it is true, tell me why AIPAC spends $200 million every year. Tell me why. If everything is set, they're gonna go and they will close down AIPAC. Why do they have pro-Israeli organizations recruiting people every day? Why do you have right-wing racist organizations registering people to vote, misleading and misinforming voters? Why do they do that if they think everything is set? Honestly, the only ones who think they're powerless or that their power or their activism is useless usually are the victims of the abuse of power, subhanAllah. Not only they abuse us by taking our rights, occupying our people, hurting our people, but also they've convinced us that we can't even fight back against it. So we have to shift that. We have to change that because no, you have a power that very few people around the world have. There are 6 to 8 billion people around the world. There are 2 billion Muslims around the world. And I can tell you this, no other Muslim have more power and opportunity for political change than the 5 to 6 million Muslim in America that we have. And I challenge anybody, nowhere else. Some people have more money, although I will challenge that too. Per capita, we have more money in America than anywhere else. But put that aside. The political power that we have here, because we have something called the Constitution, a great document that actually levels the playing field. Perfect, nothing is perfect, but it's one of the best written constitutions for any country. Has it always been something we follow? No, unfortunately, the history of our country, we can talk about it, how many times we've abused the values of the Constitution. But at least it's there. And if we play by building the power that we have, we understand the system and its flaws, because it's a flawed system. But if we understand it, we can flex our power, inshallah, to advance our interests and the interest of all those who are oppressed in our country and beyond. And I mean that. Wallahi, I've seen the change happen. When people get together, they make a change. Only just yesterday, we celebrated a small victory. You know, the city of LA, nearby, closest, you're the closest to it, was about, you know, they had an introduction for almost a law, you know, a city ordinance, basically a decision, to spend $2 million of the city money, taxpayers' money, residents' money, to hire Israeli or former IDF, I don't think we should ever call them IDF, it's the IOF, the Israeli Occupation Forces. Former IOF soldiers as security guards protecting areas in the city. Imagine, taxpayers' money, if you live in LA, that means your money, was going to go and hire these people to provide security. Wallah, I wouldn't feel safe. You know, with these killers of children and killers of innocent people, subhanAllah. But it took, you know, CAIR launched an action alert and asked people, especially those who live in the city, to contact the city council members. And they did call them and contact them and ask them to say, this is not acceptable. And it took a while, a couple of weeks, but just yesterday they've announced to withdraw that, you know, city ordinance or motion. It was going to be a city rule, basically, right? Subhanallah. That's your power. That was not CAIR's power, because we asked them, they didn't care about us. Because we had zero power without your power, of course, without Allah's support. So you make the difference. Each one of you is a vote, and each one of you can make that difference, inshallah, in our community. So I want to conclude by saying, before I hand it over to Sister Maria, I want to say a few things very quickly. One, when we think of politics, it is very common that most of us think of which election? Presidential, right? Like the first question, the minute I was parking and I came, people are saying, who do we vote for? Kamala Harris? Do we vote for Trump? Do we abstain? Do we vote for third party? Jill Stein? We can talk about all of that, obviously. But the real politics that impact your life on a daily basis is actually at the local level. And that is, it happens to be actually the easiest type of political engagement. Because it's much easier, trust me. A couple of phone calls, a couple of meetings will get you a meeting with the mayor. I can guarantee that. You leave it to some of the community activists here, and I can guarantee you within a week or two you'll have a meeting with the mayor or the city council member. Maybe some activism, some relationship building, you'll get a meeting with your assembly member, with your state senator, with your even member of Congress. I think the member of Congress for this area is Maxine Waters, if I'm not mistaken. You will get that. She's actually open to the community. How often can you meet with your president? Good luck, right? And even if he hears to you, he listens to you, is he going to hear you out? Is he going to follow? No, he's not. There are so many factors. The real politics is when you start engaging with candidates, even before they become city council members. Because that's how they start, that's the path. City council, assembly, state senate, member of Congress, run for office for president. You catch them now, you educate them now, you build a relationship now. When they're running for the higher positions, it's a phone call away. They know you, they trust your judgment. They're not always going to agree with you, and that's normal. You're going to have to build that power. So, number one, take it out of your mind that it's only presidential. Who do we vote? We'll talk about it maybe during the Q&A. CAIR cannot endorse, the Masjid cannot endorse, but I can put factors for us to look at. The main factor is always, in any election, and that is my rule, the rule I learned from my scholars, our scholars, is voting. Sheikh Qaradawi, rahimahullah, used to, when he was asked one time, is it halal or haram to vote about Muslims in America? He said, is it wajib or not to vote? This is the question. Meaning, if you don't vote, in situations where your vote might bring, possibly, doesn't have to be certainly, it possibly can ease somebody's pain or bring more good, you're actually a sinning person. Like if you think your vote might bring some change and you don't vote, so it's no longer halal or haram. This is actually wajib or not. And in many cases it becomes wajib for us. Our vote, we have the ability to vote that 2 billion other Muslims around the world, even if they have a chance to vote, cannot change US foreign policy. The only ones who can change US policy is you and me, as Americans, right? So for us, our vote can make a huge difference. And it's important for us to know, in any race, Congress, mayor, city council, or president, we look at the candidates, whether it's 2 or more. Who is the candidate that will bring potentially the least harm, or possibly the more or the most good? A lot of times you're choosing between bad and less bad, right? The lesser of 2 evils, as they say. Sometimes you get a race between bad and semi-good, very few times, right? Most times, let's face it, most times you're trying to get the person in office who will cause the least damage. That's really like, and that's a mandate. Don't say, I hear that from Muslims, I'm tired of the lesser of 2 evils, I'm just gonna wait for the good. Umar ibn Khattab is not coming back. Sayyidina Umar, that was for his time. There are no Sahaba running for office. There are no prophets running for office. Whoever is running for office, trust me, 99.99999% of the time is going to be people you don't fully agree with. Let's face it, you might not even agree with yourself 100%, right? Sometimes you have doubts about it, let alone your spouse, your children, your friends. It's normal, human nature. So you're always looking for the one who brings the less of the harm, darb al-mafasid, as our scholars call it, or jalb al-masalih, what will bring best for us. So for us, I will conclude with this. You can make more difference than you could imagine. How many members of Congress in the House exist? 58. In Congress? Yeah. 435 members of Congress in the House. How many in the US Senate? 100. 2 from every state. Now, it means in order to make a difference on what gets voted in Congress, literally all you need is majority plus 1, right? That would be 218, if anybody is doing the math, right? Am I correct? Yes. For the House. 218. That is not a lot. You know when Netanyahu showed up to speak, this war criminal, killer of babies, you know how many members of Congress abstained from attending because they did not agree with him? 130. We've never had that before. Why do you think they skipped? Because of Muslim power and their friends, not just Muslim. Because they decided to build power, build muscle, and show off. What's the use of building muscle if you're not gonna flex it, right? The Muslim community is building power and flexed it in every state, especially in swing states. In Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Minnesota, and so on. And they had almost 600 people vote uncommitted. That's why do you think the establishment of the Democratic Party kicked Biden in the behind and told him, sit aside? Because the power. Because people built power and said, you will never win as long as you keep fielding this genocide enabler. The Democratic Party, it's not like they care about Palestinians suddenly, or at least not the establishment at least. But they said we're going to lose. So they forced that change. So that is what I'm saying. You have that power, you flex that power, don't waste it. If we were able to convince 130 members of Congress not to attend the speech of the war criminal, how many more do we need to get to the 218? Less than 100, right? About 90? 88 to be exact. Thank you, Brother Amin. Right? 88. And by the way, before the last 9 months, the most we were able to get was 50 people skip Netanyahu. So if we're able in 9 months to get 50, from 50 to 130, because of the emotion and the activism that happened, it is another 2-3 years of the same level of activism, focus, organizing. We can get to 218 and make sure that no policy gets pushed in Congress that support occupation, colonialism, racism, bigotry, exploitation of other countries, exploitation of people in America. We can do it, my dear brothers and sisters. And with that, let's learn how to do it, inshallah. Turn it over to Sister Monica.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As Brother Hussam said, I'm the Senior Policy and Advocacy Manager at CAIR LA. I'm also a former teacher, so expect this to be a little interactive in a conversation as we move throughout. Tonight, I want to talk about building Muslim power, and I'm going to come at it from an angle where, yes, our vote matters, but it is not the only. Hello? Okay. And we're going to talk about the vote, but I also want to talk about other ways to get involved, because voting is just one piece of building that power, okay? So as we get started, Brother Hussam touched on this a little bit, but I would love to hear from you all. You know, when you hear the word power, what feeling, emotion, what do you associate power with? What words come to mind? Political power? Go ahead.
Domination.
Politics, dominating.
Economic power. Physical.
Force, economic, physical.
Influence.
Positive, negative.
Revolution.
Revolution, I like it. Who's an example of someone you think is powerful? What makes them powerful?
Talking about today or history?
Either way.
Malcolm X.
Yeah. Why?
Because he educated himself and he challenged his country. So that was his main purpose of getting education. People go to college, but they have no intention of challenging anything. They're just trying to better their economics. He educated himself while he was in prison, and he said, when I come out, I will challenge this American government till the day I die. That's what he did. That's power.
So the brother mentioned Malcolm X and his use of education, not only to advance himself, but to use that education to challenge the status quo that existed at the time. Martin Luther King, same kind of, yeah, wonderful. Others, maybe not so positive examples. Education is power. I think you guys are setting me up beautifully for later on down the line. And actually, I have a quote here from Martin Luther King, and Brother Hussam also touched on this a little bit. Power without love is reckless. It's abusive. We see this all the time, right? But also love without power is sentimental and anemic. Okay? Love without power, we love, but what can we do for the people that we love if we don't have power? Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. And justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. So we have these elements that feed into power: love, justice, power. Power without that love, without that sense of justice, as stated here, it's abusive. We see it all over the world, all the time, right? We see it right now in Gaza. So we must keep these kind of pieces in mind. I also heard somebody talk about dominating, right? And so within the Muslim Community Action Network, we talk about this idea of dominant versus relational power. And I think the third line, dominant power, is about this idea of power over, right? Top down, the person in charge wields all the control. Whereas relational power is this idea of power with, I'm going to build with my community. And dominant power is what we see exercised a lot, and it's maintained through that coercion, the manipulation, the extraction. But relational power is through that love, that shared values, the interest, our shared interests working together. And so we really, although we operate in a system that values that dominant power, right, like that is what is at stake here in the United States, the relational power is actually how I believe the community really builds and demonstrates its power. We want power with each other. That is how we're going to build. If I'm trying to have power over you, we're fighting against each other, right? If we build power with, that is how we become a fabric that is intertwined, that lifts everything, a strong fabric. So again, in the United States, I make really clear that I'm talking about the United States context because it's not necessarily this way everywhere. In the United States, think about 4 kinds of power. The first is electoral. We're going to talk, this is like voting together. We'll talk a little bit more about each kind. Positional. The third is financial. And then one that I think is really interesting and doesn't get talked about enough is the idea of narrative power, especially now with social media. There's ways to tell a story that have really upended the ways we've traditionally understood things. And you see this a lot with Gaza and how that's unfolded. So electoral power refers to people voting together, right? So that's what we're talking about for November. And wallahi, voting is the easiest, like it's the simplest tool that we can use to vote. You go for like an hour, maybe if the line is, you still have your ballot at home, honestly, and then you can just drop it in the mail. It's the least we can do. So electoral power refers to voting together to support initiatives. Positional power this refers to individuals who are decision makers, but also gatekeepers. So the administrative assistant for the mayor is just as important as the mayor when you're trying to get an appointment with the mayor, right? So actually, these executive assistants or people who are gatekeepers, we call them gatekeepers because literally they're kind of like a gate to our elected leaders, are incredibly important of information and resources. And so again, it includes elected officials, also appointed positions. We don't think about this enough. So, for example, each county, including LA County, has a human relations board that focuses on issues related to ethnicity, race relations, religious relations. All those positions are appointed. They're not elected. And they're appointed by elected officials, which is where relationships with them become important. But that, just as much as, let's say, a planning commission, if you guys want to expand the masjid, right? A building commission, those are the folks who give permits and make the rules for those kinds of things. So those positions are also important. Financial power, we think about this a lot, right? This is fundraisers for causes or candidates that people believe in. Also though, philanthropy, community, and what we're realizing too, the power of the person, boycott, right? So we think about it often in just fundraisers for elected officials, but we can wield power when we wield it together, especially, I'm not a billionaire, I don't have billions to buy a campaign, but if I can get together with my community and we force change through boycotting, Starbucks has had to close many, many locations around the world, right, as a result of these boycotts. That is also financial power. And then the last one, narrative power. which we have, which I mentioned earlier, which is, I think, a little bit less talked about. But these are actually three great examples of narrative and how narrative power happens. And so the middle is sort of right after 9/11, right? So the narrative, the dominant narrative about Muslims at that time, Muslims are terrorists, right? That was the narrative that was there. I have the ADL. Raise your hand if you know the ADL, familiar with the Anti-Defamation League. They're basically the Zionist-like media arm and communications arm. So whenever we talk about this is anti-Semitic, right? Particularly like anything pro-Israeli is anti-Semitic. Anything anti-Israeli is anti-Semitic. This is sort of a narrative and a piece of communication that's being pushed. But we also see it changing with the students, right? Where kafiyas now symbolize revolution, pushback against the status quo, the people rising, right? And you see, you know, Free Palestine and the Palestinian flag and bringing attention to this idea. I'm gonna get a little heady, but like that colonialism is extracting, right? Because you hear now about the Congo and how in the Congo children are forced to mine for nothing for our batteries, right? For the batteries that our beloved phones, right? These children are mining, right? In Sudan, the issues of gold, all of this extraction of resources, and so that's come up because of this narrative power, the change in narrative that has emerged as a result of Gaza. So I'm looking at time. I will. Well, we can have a little bit of a discussion. So. Which lever do you, out of the four that I just talked about, positional, electoral, financial, narrative, which lever do you feel most comfortable with? Which one do you think is the most important? And or what do you think we could do a better job of as a community in terms of these powers?
Narrative.
Narrative? You think we could do better? It's the most powerful.
Well, because most people who come to America, they don't look at the narrative of black people. They call us African Americans, but we're not Americans. Malcolm said we didn't land on Plymouth Rock landed on us. And so one of the things he also said, he said democracy is hypocrisy, and it's true. So America is an occupied land. So we can't talk about Palestine and neglect the fact that this is the
Indigenous peoples here.
Yeah. You know, and so for African Americans, most of us are indigenous, African, and we have European because of the race that took place. So we have mixed emotions. Most black people are pro-America without even knowing why. Because of the narrative. Because the narrative has been pushed on us, so we're loyal. We go into the military, but those same people went to the Vietnamese. They never called us the N-word. They never mistreated us. But how many millions of black people went to the military since then? Why? It's the narrative. So this is very important, the narrative.
Yes. Brother, it means also talking to sort of the insidiousness of the narrative as well. So think about how history gets taught in schools, right? And what gets included and excluded from history. Right now, in the state of California, there's a battle on ethnic studies and what can be included in ethnic studies. Ethnic studies is now a requirement to graduate from high school. Ethnic studies refers to the teaching of different ethnicities and histories of different races within California. Within the original version, Arab American and South Asian studies was included. But in the revised version, it has totally been excluded and erased. So now, South Asians and Arabs don't exist as part of Asian studies in California, right? And so this idea of history and how it's taught, because we don't know what we don't know, right? And so this is, if this is the only thing we are taught, this becomes our narrative and our dominant way of thinking. Others, levers of power that you think are interesting or that you've worked with in the past in your experience with that?
Financial.
Electoral.
Because
Electoral
the Jews
power.
are ruling and all these bans are by Jews, they're dominating. Muslims say boycott it, but we don't have solutions. So if we would have advanced the financial,
Financial is the most
Muslim help.
So some people are saying that financial is the most important, and also that that's what we need to improve in the most. And mashallah, like our community has actually, especially when we work together, financial power, but we have to organize it, right? Brother Malcolm X, we're out organized. We're not out powered, we're out organized.
Black Panther Party.
Yeah. Right.
Black Panther Party.
Yeah. Brother, you were saying? Electoral power. Say more.
We need, when we are organized, our power will have weight
Yes.
and will affect on those who are in charge.
Yes, yes, yes. Right now, either sometimes we're divided, and so it dilutes our power, right? Or people just simply aren't engaged, and so when somebody is being, running for office, it's like 10 of them are going to vote. I don't need to worry about the issues there, right? So let's talk about how we use November to build power. I think it's very important to understand that November is not the end game. November 5th, the election day doesn't happen and we're like, we did it. Instead, November is an opportunity for us to build our long-term power. Somebody said earlier, knowledge education is power, right? Education doesn't just happen in a schoolroom, in a classroom. Education happens by getting involved, and so that's what we're going to talk about right now. And you don't have to get involved in big ways. Just little ways can help you. So we're going to talk about using November to build power, and we're going to talk about 3 ways in particular, and I'll give you all some ideas. Inshallah, I would love to see some of this come through in the masjid as well. So all of these are C3 compliant. So first, this idea that knowledge is power. Learn about elected positions. As Brother Hussam said, we always think about the president, right, in the elections. But the president actually, honestly, even at the federal level, has very limited power compared to Congress. And then if you're thinking about your day-to-day life, your city council, your water board, your state senators, your assembly members, those are the ones who really affect your school board members for your kids. Your school board members are the ones who really affect our day-to-day life. So we're going to learn about elected positions, knowledge is power, learn about the campaign process. Learn, it seems very amorphous, but like, what happens with these donations over here? What is door knocking? What is phone banking? How do I build a relationship with somebody who's going to become an elected official? We'll talk a little bit about that. And then lastly, no matter who gets elected in November, our community is going to hurt in some way. And so we need to build community. We need to be ready to be there for each other. In organizing circles, we talk about mutual aid. And so we'll talk a little bit about how we can build community just within ourselves as well. So learning about elected positions. So campaigns, like I said, can seem really unknown, but candidates love volunteers. Who doesn't like free work, right? Like free workers. And working on a campaign is a great way to build relationships. As Brother Hussam said, often at the local level, these are the people who then go on to be your state senators, your assembly members, who run for Congress. Barack Obama started as an Illinois state senator, and before that, he was just working in the community as an organizer, right? So some potential activities that you can do, just to peek under the hood of, like, how does this work, right? Just pick one state or local race. Just one. Just one. Learn about what that position does, who's running for it, and then research the position and share what you learn with others. You can also, the second bullet talks about organizing with community members. 5 or 6 of you get together, each person takes one race, does the research, and informs others. Organizations like the C3, CAIR, the nonprofit side, we are limited in making endorsements. We can't tell you who to vote for. The IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, does not allow it, right? So we're not going to save you in this space. We can't. We're not allowed to. So we have to think about, okay, like how do we work together and save ourselves, right? And one way to do this is to do the research. And there can be like 15 races on a ballot. Don't just pick one. Pick one. Start with that. Do the research. Share what you know with others. You can also host a candidate forum at your masjid. You can do this at the masjid. It's perfectly legal and fine for a masjid to do. You just have to invite all the candidates for the race. You can't just pick one because that is like an endorsement. But let's say there's a city council race here in Hawthorne for the district where the masjid is. Even if you wanted to go all city, you just invite all the candidates. You have some questions for them. and let them answer the questions, and you can learn about their positions. So that is also something you can do. We did this at the Garden Grove Masjid, and the candidates show their colors, right? So we invited for 2 or 3 races, we had 1 candidate show up, right? And that's okay. Like, it was an hour with a pro-ceasefire, pro-Muslim candidate who cared enough to come to our community, and mashallah, she got votes that night from our community. You know, she made her case. She was willing to talk, right? So that's the other thing. Like, Allah rewards the effort. Allah has the outcome. We don't have the outcome, but Allah rewards the effort. So we just have to try. All right, how campaigns work. So again, there's dozens of elections. You can reach out to a candidate you believe in. I know there are some candidates running in Hawthorne, some Muslim candidates, but non-Muslim candidates as well that maybe you support or believe in. You can look up their contact. You just Google their website and look up their contact, and they have volunteer forms. Like I said, everybody loves a free worker. So you just put in your phone number and your contact information, and they'll reach out to you. You could also, if you don't want to support a particular candidate, can do it for getting out the vote, for just encouraging people to vote. So you can do it here through the masjid or join a civic organization. And then if you wanted to get, fancier, you could host a fundraiser for a candidate you support as well. Again, you just reach out to their campaign and they'll help you. Also recruit friends. Like, it doesn't have to be, it can be a little nerve-wracking sometimes to go do these things on your own. But bring your wives and your children and make it a family affair. And then lastly, building community. I think this is so incredibly important. Like I said, regardless of the candidate that gets elected, our community is going to have challenges. So you can build a team to get involved in elections and campaigns, or a civic engagement committee here at the masjid. This is an initiative that we're, through the Muslim Community Action, we're trying to get off the ground, civic engagement committees at each masjid, because then also we can coordinate across masjids then, right? The civic engagement committee talks to this one. But then also begin talking about how you're going to work together. How are we going to help our brothers and sisters abroad? Are we fundraising? Are we collecting goods to send abroad? And not just to Gaza, right? Like I said, Congo, Sudan, Bangladesh now. There's always need everywhere. How will we also help each other locally? And also, who do we need to build stronger relationships with? What communities? What other communities do we need to build stronger relationships with to work together? So, and within that, like, how will we help to protect and educate each other? So I close now with a quote from an interview with Sami Hamdi. The greatest thing you can give to Allah is the sacrifice, not the goal. The prophets didn't manage to convince all the people and everyone. Only a few managed to convince and convert at a time. But Allah did not reward them for the number of people they managed to win over. Allah rewarded them because they kept going, even when it looked bleak. Allah is rewarding them for their striving and their effort. Again, not the outcome. So we'll take questions now. I think we have some time before Isha, and then we'll go from there.
All of them. Why? Because he read every book in the prison library, he copied the dictionary. So it's the way you apply the knowledge. Just like you have a tool. Some people are master mechanics with that tool. Other people, you can give them a whole tool set and they can't do anything with it. So it's not knowledge, it's how we apply the knowledge. All those things that you talked about are perfect, but if they're not applied in the correct method, they won't do anything.
That's very true. So talking about, for folks who might be in the back, the idea that knowledge on its own is not power. The activation of that knowledge in an organized, thoughtful way, that is power. Otherwise, honestly, it's not even like you're using it wrong. You're just holding a tool in your hand, right? You're not even trying to do anything with it. Great. Other questions for myself or Brother Hassan?
Yeah, think of it as, in terms of power, as when you think of power, think of what I talked about earlier. It's like building muscles, right?
Yeah.
But it's useless if you're not flexing it. It's just good for you to look at it. That's how knowledge, if it's not used, is. Something you put on the wall, right? I have a degree, but what is that? You have to apply it. Inshallah, as Muslims, apply it in the right way. Inshallah. So any question?
In the past 10 months, since the war on Gaza, do you notice any change in the Muslim community across United States? Do you feel there is something going on to build on and to add and make it bigger?
You can take it, but just for the people in the back. The brother asked if we've seen any changes in the Muslim community over the 10 months in their engagement and ability to take things on.
Can you hear me in the back? Inshallah, sisters, yeah. I will say yes, alhamdulillah. There's certainly very positive change, but not enough. I'll tell you where the change is. The change is we've seen more Muslims express frustration with the injustice being pushed by our government's policy, like recognizing that our government is responsible. You know, our government is not silent, is not complicit, in my opinion. Our government is the government that is making the genocide happen. So now Muslims are recognizing that. But what I've seen Muslims do, flex their muscle into the street. Street is power, no debate. It helps with the leveraging of narrative. But it does not, if it's not translated into electoral power, it becomes useless. It becomes an exercise of feeling good. I'll be very frank with you. It is so much easier to get Muslims to go on the street holding the signs, scream, shout. Trust me, I do that all the time, so I'm not putting people down. It is so much easier to tell people, hey, we're gonna go to the Israeli consulate, we're gonna go to this place, hold the signs. I can get hundreds of people. I wish we can get thousands, we should. But we'll go there, we'll scream. I'll give you a story that happened, true story. You know, I wasn't wearing a CAIR hat at that time. So this was second or third month after Israel started the genocide. I was in Corona. MashaAllah, the Muslim community took the lead to answer Dr. Muhammad's question, to organize a rally in solidarity with the Palestinian people. MashaAllah, over 1,000 people showed up to this rally. Corona, small city. This was the largest, according to the city, this was the largest rally in the city's history. This is a city that existed from the days of the cowboys, right? That's how old that city is. And this was the largest rally in the city's history, subhanAllah. You would think you would have a larger one for the civil rights movement. And yet, we could not convince the city council to vote in support of a ceasefire. Let me tell you what happened with me. So I was asked to speak, and I went to speak. I live in Corona. And this was about 4 p.m. And I spoke, and mashallah, takbir, Allahu Akbar, free Palestine, from the river, everything, alhamdulillah. And I finished my speech and I said, inshallah, as we finish and wrap up and go back home, at 6 p.m., there is a Zoom meeting, so there's no driving involved, a Zoom meeting with our dear sister, Rashida Tlaib, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib from Michigan. And this is an open event where anybody can go in. I'll give you the Zoom link. And the purpose of it is to show support because she's under the most attack of AIPAC. She was receiving the most defamation, hate, threats you could imagine by AIPAC and other pro-Israelis. So please show up. You can give $10, $50, $100, $1,000, whatever you can do to support her campaign as they were getting ready for the primary. And everybody, absolutely, takbir, inshallah, inshallah. I go on the Zoom call. Allah is my witness. I go on the Zoom call. And mashallah, there were dozens, maybe hundreds of people from around the country. And I'm looking for my Corona people or Riverside people. Wallahi, Allah is my witness. Not one single person was there. So I'm on the call, and I started texting the people at least that I remember who were there and told me, inshallah, we'll make it. First one said, oh, I'm glad you reminded me. Excuse, happens. And he made it on the call. Second one, wallahi, brother, it was such a hot day today, I'm tired. I'm just resting now. Another person didn't respond until like 2 hours later. Oh, I forgot. And so at the end, 2 or 3 people joined. What I'm saying is, we have to translate that feeling, those emotions, into real power. I was just checking now because I wanted to check. Out of the 130 members of Congress who didn't attend, there were like 17 or 18 from California. By the way, she is actually otherwise usually good on many of the issues. Congresswoman Maxine Waters, she's actually good on a lot of our issues. And even the voting record on Palestine is decent. I would say I would put her at a decent. But I noticed her name. She was not one of those who skipped the meeting. How many of you live in the Hawthorne area? Hawthorne Torrance area? Yeah, probably all of you. And if you go a little bit south, you have Ted Blue. You know, if you're Lomita area. So probably most of you, your representative in Congress is Maxine Waters. And as I said, she's not a bad person, actually. She's really good on many, many of our issues. Immigration, civil rights, Islamophobia. Even Palestine, she has had decent voting record. But I'm surprised that she did not skip the meeting. So, you know, a good exercise, in addition to the exercise that Sister Monica said of volunteering, is calling her office. Say, hey, I found out that, is it true? Maybe I'm wrong, actually, maybe I'm wrong. Ask, did she attend the speech by the war criminal Netanyahu? If they say yes, they say why? I'm shocked. I vote for her, I support her, whatever it is that applies to you. Because that's how it makes a difference. The staff at the office tally how many calls they receive. And if they get 30, 40 calls, you, your spouse, your children are calling, your friends, they will let her know. And take my word, the next time there's another moment to make a decision, that comes into question. They say, you know what, last time I did it, my constituents, my voters, didn't like it. I'm out of it. Because I can bet you, if betting was halal, that there are way more of us pro-Palestinians and pro-peace and anti-genocide people in that district than they are pro-genocide people. But the difference is, they are louder. They are more organized. The quote that Sister Monica earlier.
That is something I would also add about a shift over the last 10 months. So in the beginning in particular, I'm sure you did a WhatsApp message like this, protest over here, city council meeting here, these 5 petitions, donate here for this person and for this cause, etc. And I think over time, people have gotten tired and just kind of fallen out, as Brother Kusam has said. They're there or more on but even the protests, over the last 10 months have gotten smaller, right? But what I think has also happened is that it's like what I said. People started going to city council meetings, and they're like, oh, this is how it works. So that's like yelling on the streets is not doing anything in here. So what will make a difference in here? What do I need to start doing to make a difference in here? And sometimes it's the protests, but sometimes they realize, oh, like they knew how they were going to vote before we even got in the room. So I need to start meeting with them beforehand, or I need to start getting involved in their campaigns. And so I've seen that shift. We're still in the very early stages, but people are starting to understand the mechanics of sort of the process, both the written rules, but also the unwritten rules of how things happen. That's another shift I've seen. Yes, brother.
The Muslims outnumbered the Jews, but the Jews out-organized us.
Exactly.
And each November, we have the same approach, and we expect better results. That's not it's not the right approach. We have to seek alternatives. Just for example, here in Hawthorne, we have Brother Mo Awadallah. He's running for the city council. And he asked the board here to assist him, and they said, no, we cannot do nothing. We don't want to get involved in politics. And this contradicts what you said about building community. We need changes, and I think the Shura Council has a big role in guiding all the mosques to the right and mobilizing them.
Yeah, inshallah. There is, I think, with reason, a lot of caution in our community with getting involved, right? We've been under surveillance, we have been, we're targeted, right? And so I understand the hesitation, right? People are nervous. At the same time, the IRS is very clear in the rules, and as long as you do not endorse or support a specific candidate, you can open your doors. So again, for example, if the masjid wanted to have a candidate forum and invite all of the candidates for a certain election, they could do that. And it could be just a meet and greet, it could be a formal candidate forum. But I agree, there's also, I think what you raised as well is like, Muslim leadership organizations, what is also their role and their opportunity for providing guidance and leadership in this space as well?
Gotcha. Sorry, brother, just 1 second. Hajj Abdul
And I know
Kareem,
we have Isha.
Hajj Abdul Kareem brought up a very good point. I would say, in general, yes, masajid have to be careful not to seem their endorsement. But what is powerful is when you as a community organize on the side of the masjid. You can be on the board, you can be a member, you can be the imam, you can be, but on the side, I mean, I'm active in my masjid in Corona. We do political work on the side. So what we can do, if you set up a committee, the Halter Muslim voter drive, whatever you can call it, you can call it group informal, and then you coordinate with the masjid and say, honestly, even better than inviting Monica and me here, is inviting the candidate. If you host a candidate forum here and announce, and you invite all these candidates and tell them we'd like you to come and meet with the community, and trust me, even that number, mashallah, is amazing. This number is amazing. But I'll tell you, if each one of you invites another person and you have double that number, these politicians, they're gonna drool. You're gonna have to give them Kleenex. They're gonna be drooling. If they see 50 people in a room, they're gonna be drooling because they're thinking, each one of you can get 10 votes. 50 people times 10, 500, I won. That's what the margin, at a local, that's it. If you can get the margin of 500 votes, extra votes, from one visit, that's it, you made it. You're king makers. So if you invite the candidates, if only one shows up, it's the loss of the other ones. He or she who attends is gonna gain your votes and obviously make the case, hear from you, change their policy on certain things. So I 100% agree with Hajj Abdul Kareem. That's really not the masjid. I would say it's really you. You can set up a committee, 5 people, 6 brothers, 6 sisters together, and say our goal is going to be 2 things. Number 1, some of us are going to volunteer on the races we like, whether it's that brother running, sister running, person running, friendly person running, city council, mayor, assembly, whatever it is. Learn about it, attend. Work with the masjid to host a candidate forum so they can learn. When they come and see the Muslim community, that's when they learn. I'll tell you, if they do not become our friends, you know what happens? They don't want to make us their enemies. Because they're going to come, especially if you invite them Eid prayer or Jum'ah. I have literally seen candidates drool. I'm not joking. At an Eid prayer in Garden Grove, the masjid, when they used to have 20,000 people. When our politicians and candidates show up to a Corona masjid, Eid prayer, when we have 5,000 people there, you can see these candidates looking like, because I've never seen that many people in their life. In their mind, if every one of them votes, that's it. If I can get these people to vote, I don't need anybody else. So they're looking at us like, and I can tell you, Corona, very conservative city. But nobody runs for office in Corona without coming to get the blessing from the Muslim community. Because they've leveraged our numbers and our existence. So do that. Last item, because Hajj Abdul Kareem made it, and I want to make sure that we don't miss it. Even when we're comparing the number of Muslims versus Jews in America, the good news is, not all Jews are buying into Zionism. So alhamdulillah, we're good. We make dua that Allah opens the minds and hearts of more people and more Jews and Christians to the truth of Zionism and Israel. Alhamdulillah, our battle is easy, because all we have to do is expose genocide, expose racism. I don't envy the ones who have to defend genocide. For us, we have to spend $1, they have to spend $10,000, because you have to buy people's, morals and conscience, right? For us, we have to expose injustice. For them, they have to work hard, because you have to buy somebody has to sell out their principles and values in order to support genocide. So for us, even within the Jewish community, actually young Jews are pro-Palestinian. And I'll tell you something, when I go to these protests, do you know I see more Jews than Muslims at these protests? Allah is my witness. I'm happy to see them, but I'm sad that we don't see more of the Muslim community. Who is camping out in Congress and gets arrested? It's members of Jewish Voice for Peace, and it's not now. By the hundreds, last 2 weeks ago, 400 Jews were arrested in Congress before Netanyahu spoke. So we want to build alliances, because we're a community. There's a Muslim community and there's the wider community. And we need to find those who share our values, so we can make it clear that we're not the only ones who care about justice. Let's face it. There are people who care about justice from the black non-Muslim community, from the Latino community, from the Arab Christian community, from the Jewish community, and so on and so forth. Find those commonalities. I think for Isha,
Right, yeah,
we
we're
will have-
Isha. The,
9:30.
I think they made an
15 minutes?
extension, if you're okay, to 9:45, I think. 9:40, we'll stop.
okay. The other thing I wanted to add is if this is something you want to, like the committee is something you want to get off the ground here, or we're happy to help. We've been helping community members do this at masjids across Southern California, so we can sort of provide guidance on how to get that running.
A couple of things. Firstly, Maxine Waters is not endorsed by Black America. She got in because of us. She talked a good game, but now any issue that comes up for here in Los Angeles, we don't trust her no more. That's number one. Number two, the Jews have been here longer than the Muslims. So you can't really, those are two different measuring sticks. The Jews founded the NAACP. Most people don't know that. If you ask most people who founded the NAACP, they will tell you black people. No, the Jews founded the National Advancement Association for Colored People. They were called colored until they made it economically. The Irish were called colored. The Italians were called colored. So one of the things that the Muslims could do today is side with Black America as an ally, because you could easily point to what the Jews failed us. The whole time we've been in this country, the Jews, Malcolm taught us that you don't look at just things in terms of black and white. You look at terms of pros and cons. Who would lose the most if Black America became independent? The Jews, because they control us. All the entertainment industry, the NBA, they're commissioners of all of that. So one of the things that the Jews, they started a mafia. That's how Vegas got created. The Italians were the muscle, the Jews were the mind, the banks. So when we look at the Jews, the difference between us and them is we have a haram, they don't. So I find it troubling when Muslims try to compare the Jews and the Muslims, because we have a halal and haram, they don't. So they created a mafia. There was a lot of murder. They do movies about it, and these are true stories. So that's back to Maxine Waters. She's just not. A lot of times people, they roar loud to get in office. As soon as they get there, they kick back. So that's one thing that people need to be aware of.
Yeah, two things, and I, because we're in the masjid, we want to be careful not to sound like we're endorsing Maxine Waters or not, for example. But I would say she needs to hear from you, the way every member of Congress has to. And when they don't hear from us, they hear from the other side. What did I say about politicians?
That's who they endorse.
They follow the path of least resistance. If we become the path of more resistance, right? They're gonna go we're gonna push them the way we want. Like the water when it flows. If we're not existent, water will go over us all the time. That's what happens. Everybody's walking over us all the time. And also when we talk about communities, as a Muslim community that often gets generalized, I always like to make sure our choice of words is we don't generalize on. There's no one Muslim community. Trust me. Otherwise, look at what is happening in Sudan. Look what happened in Syria. Look what happened in Egypt, right? How people who claim to be Muslim are killing other Muslims. Look at what the UAE government is doing to our Palestinian brothers, right? Look what happened in Bangladesh just the last couple of months. Thousands of students killed, wounded, attacked, beaten up. So there's no one Muslim. There are good Muslims, there are bad Muslims. There are good Jews, bad Jews. Good Christians, bad Christians. We can look at political power in pro-Israel, anti-Israel, pro-racism, anti-racism, because I want to make sure that even when we go for politics, our language also helps us build that power, inshallah. Any more comments?
Could you please explain to us what's the relationship with impact and CAIR? How do they overlap, or are they separate?
Sure. MPAC is another great organization that has been doing great work for many, many years, and actually in LA before CAIR came here. But their focus is not grassroots, their focus is more on the policy level, focusing on the issues. So most work is a little bit different. There is some overlap, sometimes there is geographic. They're more active in the LA area than we do sometimes. We're more active in the Inland Empire, Orange County, Northern LA. When we overlap, sometimes on areas we agree with, we collaborate. Areas we have a different perspective or approach, we respect to disagree, and sometimes we advise each other or even criticize each other, and that is okay, it's healthy. No, but it's overall an organization that I do believe is doing good work, mashallah, and if you happen to be closer to them on something, you know, because of geography, their office nearer to you, work with them. The key is, I'll tell you, what is not acceptable for us is not to be organized as Muslims, to be just angry about the situation. And there are good reasons for us to be angry. Wallah, if there's a Muslim who's not angry, if there's a Muslim who has not cried over the last 10 months, if there's a Muslim who has not felt frustrated, there's something in their iman, right? We all felt it. But the key is, how do we channel that? And Islam teaches us to channel it in a positive way, productive way, unifying way, a way to bring change, not just to vent. So if you find an organization that is closest to your values, to you geographically, to join it. But that is the key. Work with them, because power is in, as Muslims, you know. Yadullahi ma'a jama'a. Allah's support comes with jama'ah. When we do alone, we're weak. That's what. 57 Muslim majority countries, right? 57 Muslim majority countries could not agree or do not have the ability to enter one bottle of water to Gaza. 2 billion Muslim, 57 Muslim majority countries, government, cannot decide to send one bottle, cannot send one Tylenol bottle to the children of Gaza. Because Israel scares them, right? Because they're not united. So we want to find ways to unite. We have to mature where even when we disagree, it's okay. It's healthy. It's okay. We can disagree. And sometimes we disagree. Both are right, different tactics. Sometimes I would believe one is right, one is wrong. It happens, right? You have good judgment. But the key is to organize. I prefer for us to organize Islamically within the Muslim community, because these are our issues. This is how we build power. But if you feel, I don't have time, Muslim community is taking too long, they're not organized in my area, and you want to organize through a Democratic party, Republican party, I can tell you my favorite one, you know, because I think it's closer or easier to work with. But honestly, at this point, it doesn't matter. If you can get organized politically with the existing system, with its many flaws, I can count the flaws between now and morning. As long as you don't give up your principles, as long as you don't go and have to compromise your principles, you're going to have to make some compromise on tactics and here and there, that's okay. Because you can make more change also, or different types of change within the existing political system. Because that's how we want to do that, inshallah. You want to make that? Do that? Okay. Inshallah. We were allowed only a few more minutes after Isha. We might finish at Isha time, but they told us if you need another 5-10 minutes, forgive us. It's Jum'ah, Friday night. It's an important topic. It's up to you. If there are no more questions, we'll finish, inshallah.
I like to hear something from gatekeepers, that version, how we can encourage our youth and everybody to get there and then understand how it's valuable. Like Lincoln was able to pass through, override the Congress and get the kingdom. Pretty much like that, the gatekeepers, even in local level, maybe you can encourage. And the other thing about our local candidates, if they have really want to get the vote, they can pick up the phone and make a call to individual or come to the door and say salam and talk to us like human beings. Then maybe they get the vote. Otherwise they can do many things. They won't get the vote.
So the brother was talking about getting the youth involved. Did I hear that right?
The gatekeepers who they are the one going to get there, right?
Yeah, who will tomorrow and in the future be the
That'll be much
involved.
easier than all the activism
Yeah.
together. Then we'll have strength right there.
Inshallah. And that is incredibly important, and I actually think that what we've seen in some ways over the last few months is the youth at the forefront, right, with the protests at the universities and organizing, and they are the ones who are actually in some ways teaching. I don't know if you all saw the piece about there was a news story about the protest at UCLA, and they interviewed an older man, and they were like, "Why are you here?" And he was like, "My daughter's here." and she asked me to come support her, and I'm here to support her, and I'm the proudest father that I could be being here to support her. And so in many ways, the youth have actually set an example for us and how to be better. I think the brother's right too, and it goes back actually to history and teaching and narrative as well, that sharing with the youth an accurate, Islamically aligned, helping them to understand the moment of now in this way, it's going to make it easier for us 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years down the road, because they're already ready, they understand, they're primed. And then you also mentioned at the local level, having elected officials come. The truth of the matter is some will, but honestly you're going to have to invite more than the ones who will just show. And inviting, we're taught to be good hosts, right? That's a part of our faith, is opening our doors. And so I think opening the door, and then let them reveal themselves to you. They'll tell you, whether or not, they're worth any more investment of time and energy. So.
A lot of youngsters are going to protest. I've seen that very good. But what protection do they get? Because the parents said, okay, my son, my daughter is going there, and they'll be like, okay. Now people know that eagle's on the forefront. So as you might have heard in the news, or maybe you guys have seen, maybe I'm wrong, that they're gonna take revenge of everybody right to Palestine. What protection do you have?
I mean, very quickly on this one, what is the protection we provide? I haven't heard any question from the sisters, so maybe after that, I'm counting on the sisters to balance it out. I feel bad we're not hearing from you. Maybe we'll pass you a microphone if need be. The brother is asking, what kind of protection do we provide to youth who participate, youth or adults who participate in protest? Honestly, I would say Allah is the protector, number one. Alhamdulillah, as Muslims, and I know we all agree, Alhamdulillah ta'ala, we do things knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect us. And the risk, the worst risk we face is 1% of what the brothers and sisters in Gaza are facing. What the youngest child in Gaza is facing. And I know I'm not sounding like, no, of course, don't be crazy. But I'm saying, alhamdulillah, let's put things in perspective. We are doing little compared to what they're doing. And why are they doing that? Why are the people of Gaza being attacked? Because they stood for their honor and the honor of the Ummah. They're not doing it for themselves, by the way. They can easily act like the rest of many people around them in the Arab countries. But they said, Al-Masjid al-Aqsa, the honor of the Ummah, is worth standing up for. Do you agree with them? Yes. They took the brunt of it. They're dying. They're being killed. They're being massacred. They're being decapitated. They're beheaded by the Israelis. We at least can stand up to say that is not acceptable. So knowing that, now we can measure what's risky, what is not. Because I agree with the brother. As Muslims, we have to be smart. We don't do things crazy and risk things. If you work for a place where your boss will fire you because of your political activism, I will tell you don't participate. It's okay. I'll cover for you. Dr. Muhammad will cover you, right? We'll go to, if attending a protest, and expose, maybe put a scarf on your face, cover your face. Because yes, they're vicious. They are falsely accusing people of anti-Semitism, especially people in the medical field, doctors, and that could be an issue for your reputation. But if you're in a place where you're safe, if you work for CAIR, if you work for the masjid, if you have your own business, no, that's fine. Now, in terms of legality, legally you're protected. Legally, it's free speech, free assembly, right? It is all protected. The problem is they're not using the legal means. What they're doing is they're using economic pressure, PR pressure, defamation. So if you work for a company and you're, let's say, real case, somebody who works for a finance company in LA, and he happens to be Muslim, and he wrote something on his social media, very, very basic, supporting Palestinians' rights, said, I stand by, with the Palestinians. And then some of the pro-Israelis found out, they saw his name, searched his name, found out where he works, and they started bombarding his company with phone calls. His boss happens to be actually Italian-American, who is pro-Palestinian. So he came to him, he said, listen, I'll show you my private images. Look what I have on my phone. He showed him. Look what I share with my family. Very pro-Palestinian. He said, but I don't post that on my social media. He said, for God's sake, 90% of our investors are pro-Israelis, right? So I'm gonna have to fire you unless you take down that post, because otherwise all of them are threatening us, and you have to do that, unfortunately. So pick and choose your battles, because the reality is not a legal issue. Legally, you're protected. These students are protected for the most part. That's why 95% of them, they're not charged with anything, and the ones who get charged, they get charged with trespassing, things that are very minor, like a warning. What they're dealing with is economic pressure. Basically, some of these Zionists saying, we have the names and the images of those who participated, we're gonna ban them. You know, yes, some companies, some major law firms said, I'm not gonna hire anybody whose name's on this list. You know what I told these youth? You know, basically, some of them from Harvard called me, graduates of the law school there. Said, oh, you know, I got an offer from a company, and then after my name is there, now this company withdrew the offer. I said, listen, you're graduating from Harvard School. There are about 10,000 companies and law firms in the country that will beg to have you come and work for them. Yeah, maybe 20 Zionist-owned ones are not gonna hire you. It is good. I don't wanna work for a Zionist, right? So sometimes look at it, yes, you lose some, you gain some, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-Razzaq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You do, take your measure, do your wisdom, but at the end of the day, we can't let them dictate on us not to be active as a community. If protesting on the street is not the best for you specifically, maybe it is, then do social media. Maybe do a fake name, right? Abu Ahmed, Abu Tariq, right? Abu Umar, right? It's okay. That's not coward, that's smart. If you can't do your full name for a reason, use that thing. If you can't do either, support CAIR. Support the students who are doing it. Like everybody has one or two roles to play. Not everybody is going to play all the roles. But what is not acceptable is for somebody to say, I don't have a role.
And then what I would add as well is, if there is something that happens, not necessarily in a protest, but there's just hate crimes and incidents are on the rise right now. CAIR we handle those kinds of cases. So please, reach out, just call us, and then we'll Google our phone number, and then we can funnel. And we also did that with student protesters and things like that, arranging sort of defense. And but alhamdulillah, like Brother Hussam said, although there was the threat of it, we've seen very few charges actually filed, and they just use it as a tactic to scare people and to break things up.
Actually, it's a good way to finish the program, actually, with a very quick announcement, inshallah, to make dealing with this issue in general. Hey, and by the way, yes, many of these students, many of these Muslims, and many of these non-Muslims who dare to speak up for the humanity of Palestinians got attacked. They called CAIR. Alhamdulillah, we defended, represented many of them. I can tell you locally, hundreds of cases that we've received. But the problem is many of these cases are not legal. It's about activism. How many of you are willing to boycott a company because the company supports Israel? But how many of us do it? That's where the challenge is, right? Fewer. The other side, they are vocal and they do it. So we want to just match what they're doing. The supporters of genocide are not ashamed to say, I'm not going to buy from this pizza place because they put the Palestinian flag. Many of us, we find out that somebody supports the Israeli army and say, well, subhanAllah, I have to do it. I'm in a rush, or, what's an extra burger? It's not going to make it. What's an extra hummus packet? I'm just one. So we have to couple our values with our purchasing power. That's part of the power, economic power. So basically, I'm going to ask you a question. How many of you over the last 9 months, 8 months, have faced online, on the street, some kind of anti-Muslim act? Somebody making a comment to you, a racist comment? How many of you? I'll tell you, where I go usually, a majority of Muslims say they did. Sometimes they don't like to do it publicly. And then when I ask people, how many of you have reported that to CAIR, almost nobody does it. Why? They say, well, I was busy. Oh, I don't think it's important. So here's the thing. It is extremely important to report hate incidents. Sisters in hijab, I know my wife gets this. I mean, just a couple of days ago, this happens all the time. I know people honk at you, they threaten you, please report it to CAIR, because number one, we will be able to contact the police and force them to do an investigation, and many times they catch these people. And when we catch them, they not only protect you, but protect other people who could be future victims. Number two, it gives you as a community protection. Number three, it allows government to know, because we track, we get these numbers, and we show that how many Muslims get hate every day, every week, in the city, at universities, at the state. It forces the government to put resources into protecting against Islamophobia. Currently, there isn't a lot of attention for Islamophobia because not enough Muslims report these incidents. Please report them when they happen, because there are some resources available, including some funding for those who are victims of hate, especially if there's injury or loss of property and so on. So basically, we are partnering with actually the city of LA and the city and the Human Relations Commission on something called LA versus hate. When you get a case, please report it to CAIR. And there will be business cards outside that has an easy QR code that you can use your phone. It will link you to a place where you can report these incidents. We will help you report it to the local, to the Human Relations Commission, so they can make sure we track these information, so we can work with the police, the sheriff department, the state, to make sure they put enough resources to protect the Muslim community. We're going to conclude, inshallah, for Isha in a minute. On your way out, inshallah, what I'm hoping as a reminder, we'll reiterate your homework. As a homework, I hope you'll form a committee among yourselves to say, we're going to look at all the races in our area. Not difficult, we'll help you. Our team will help you if you need direction. Very simple. Look who's running for city council in your area, who is running for the assembly, who is running for the state senate, if this is a race happening, because it happens every 6 years. And look who's running for Congress. You know, your area is Maxine Waters, every 2 years it happens. If you live in Ted Lieu's district, get to know, mashallah. So, when you get that information, at least what you want to do is invite them to your masjid to have a candidate forum. Let them meet the beautiful community. Wallah, if they come and they see that number, they're gonna say, what's your list of issues? That's my issues now. Trust me, most of them, they will pay attention. So make sure that is your homework. And if you need help, we're willing to help, inshallah. On your way out, please make sure you sign up with CAIR's email list, so you're on the list. We update you what is happening, how to vote, how to register to vote, what are the issues happening. Action alerts is how we organize the community. Inshallah, after Isha, I will be available with Brother Samir and Sister Monica for any of your questions. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unite our ummah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to see truth and follow it, see falsehood and stay away from it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to build power for justice. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala use us as instruments and tools to help our brothers and sisters who are suffering here and abroad, and especially our brothers and sisters in Palestine, in Gaza, in Kashmir, in East Turkestan, in Burma, in Syria, in Yemen, in Iraq, and many other places where people are struggling because of injustice, and we can be, inshallah, their hope. جزاكم الله خير واخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر ان الانسان لفي خسر الا الذين امنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. I think Muhammad might any announcement or something, or just the adhan. بارك الله فيكم ان شاء الله.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله